I'm a sole trader operating at and supported by the Gorman Arts Centre in Braddon. Now, do I just click? I do, great. And assisted by a corporate advisory board consisting of a number of digital publishing gurus from within and outside the mainstream book industry. I launched the business in late 2012, a month after my first son, Sebastian, turned 3, and 8 weeks before the second one, Alexander, was born. Now 2, Alex recently bought his first ebook on my Kindle without asking my permission. But that's another story. I spent much of late 2009, 10 and 11 glued to Twitter, tracking the digital revolution that transformed the book industry and then blogging about it for my e-bookish blog. I wrote some news stories and features about it for Fairfax, my former employer, but was itching to escape and start a business of my own to tap into all this change. As a former literary editor, magazine editor, tech writer and web producer, I had the passion for books and gadgets, the journalistic and editing experience and the coding skills to be able to do just that. The fact that everything could be done online meant I could run a global publishing business from Canberra, something that would not have been possible 5 years ago. I'd always been frustrated by the word limits newspapers and magazines by their nature imposed on feature writers. I'd often had to cut 5,000 or 6,000 word features in half just to fit arbitrary spaces, and I felt frustrated about what was lost in this process. I'd also read plenty of non-fiction books that seemed to me to have been padded out to fit the conventional length of a trade book. The rise of the Kindle and the iPad, and of e-book retailers like Kobo, and of digital printing technologies allowing for affordable short print runs and print on demand, meant it was now possible to publish longer works of journalism at their natural length, whether that be 5,000, 10,000 or 40,000 words. I decided I'd build a company around this style of writing and commissioned my first book, crowdfunded. The author, just excuse me, and also pick up a lot of colds from that 2-year-old. The author, digital publishing expert Anna Maguire, planned to write about 15,000 words. The first edition was 25,000. The second, which we published late last year, came in at around 37,000. As an editor with 20 years' experience in the 400 to 2,000 word space, it was quite an adjustment, getting used to proofreading that takes 3 weeks instead of an afternoon. Next, we published Business and Baby on Board, a 25,000-word ebook guide to being a mumpreneur, for which we signed only digital rights after discovering the project on Pozible, where author Joanna Baker-Dowdall was raising funds to self-publish the print edition. Scott Bridges, here on our far left, forced me to rethink everything, which you have to be prepared to do in this industry at this time, when he pitched his book 18 Days, Al Jazeera English and the Egyptian Revolution to me at the Walkley Awards 2 weeks after Alex was born. The work was as much as 10 times longer than the books I'd been expecting to publish, weighing in at a whopping 90,000 words. But in fact, Scott had done exactly what I was talking about earlier. He'd written the book to its natural length. It was a work of long-form journalism, and a brilliantly written one at that. So we signed a contract, published the ebook the following year, and the print edition a few months later. I'm so glad Scott chose Adisha, because he's a delight to work with, and 18 Days went on to gain national and international media attention. Scott was flown to the Berlin Documentary Forum to discuss the book in the middle of last year, and recently took out the non-fiction prize, as Nikki's mentioned, at the ACT Writing and Publishing Awards. And this is what happened when that happened. There I am. I was supposed to be taking a photo of Scott, but I didn't know we were going to win. It was so exciting. And this is a certificate and stickers he collected. 18 Days is also, I think the prize money wasn't quite as big as the Prime Minister's Literary Award, unfortunately, but, you know, you've got to start somewhere. It's also, shortlisted for the ACT Book of the Year, and Adisha is the only Canberra publisher among the 5 shortlisted books. All the other publishers, you know, Allen and Unruh, whoever they're all Sydney or Melbourne. So we're pretty proud about that. You can vote for it in the People's Choice Award on the Arts ACT website, so we might be in the running there too. Scott later turned out to be one half of the Twitter sensation of 2014, which led to another Adisha title, Kevin Write a Book, The Best of Rudd 2000. You'll see to the back room in the corner the other author. The co-author is standing babysitting Scott's gorgeous little girl. They're a great team. They're a great team in print and in life. There you go. I'm sure Scott's wife will be here too soon. Yes, I'm not going to talk too much about Kevin Write a Book because I'm sure Scott's going to tell you all about it. There it is in Parliament. It has been our most successful book in terms of sales and publicity, and it helped us to score a print distribution deal with the highly respected New South Books, which is a big deal for a small press. I sent their CEO, Cathy Bale, an email a couple of days after the launch with links to the media coverage, and they offered me a 3-year contract for all titles past and present that very day. I signed it immediately before they could change their minds, and they now stock all our books and ordered another print run of Kevin only last week. They also sent me the first cheque, which would have been worthy of celebration in its own right, but arriving as it did on the same day as 2 cheques from Amazon led to me waving them up and down the corridors of Gorman House and all over Adisha's social media accounts in triumph. Someone asked me whether that meant that I could now, pay off a big chunk of the mortgage. I'm afraid to say no. I could probably pay the rent at Gorman House for about 3 months. Adisha published 2 books in between 18 Days and Kevin. David Duffy's How to Build an Android came to Adisha via then literary agent Mary Kinane. She's now a publishing consultant. It had been published to critical acclaim in the US and the UK. Yes, an Adisha title has been reviewed in The Guardian and the New York Times. But it needed a new Australian publisher. Duffy's narrative non-fiction work is a cracker story about the roboticists who created an android in the likeness of science fiction author Philip K. Dick. I guess there could be some copyright issues there. I hadn't thought about that. They toured the US with it. Then one of them left its head in an overhead locker on an aeroplane, and it has not been seen since. We published the ebook edition the day Radio National aired a documentary about robots, including an extensive interview with David. The other title is a joint venture with If Book Australia, the Institute for the Future of the Book. If you don't know about this organisation, you should. They're fantastic. They're an offshoot of the Queensland Writers' Centre. The essays in the book were originally published on the If Book website and examine experiments in writing and publishing. Contributors include Benjamin Law, Sophie Masson, James Bradley and Romy Ash. Each was challenged to try new tools and experiences and observe the effect on their craft. I was like a pig in mud editing this one, and even contributed an essay myself. Speaking of editing, I have in fact commissioned freelance book editor Sarah Fletcher to edit most of our projects and would ask her to do all of them if budgets permitted. When you're a one-woman show, paying for each new book with the profits from the last, publishing becomes very DIY. I tend to be involved in all stages of the process, from commissioning and acquiring titles to assessing submissions, negotiating contracts and rights deals, managing ISBNs, barcodes, cataloguing and publication applications with our friends here at the library, briefing a designer, typically the talented Wendy Dawes, for the cover, web banner and any other marketing material. Then there's writing cover blurbs, press releases, blog posts, e-newsletters, social media posts, creating and implementing marketing and publicity plans, sourcing images, which often involves complex copyright negotiations like the ones Melinda's described, editing the copy, laying out the pages, proofreading, creating the 3 types of ebook files. We do EPUB, MOBI and PDF, and distributing those files to retail partners, negotiating the contracts with the retail and distribution partners. You think that's it? No. Organising and speaking at launch events, negotiating with printers, paying royalties, issuing royalty statements, bookkeeping, tech support. I'm exhausted. Office management, business development, managing the website, including its e-commerce functionality, and finally, order fulfilment, which means being on first terms with everyone at our local post office. There we are with the first print run of Kevin, sending that out. So yeah, it's pretty exhausting and almost enough to make you want to go back to working for someone else, almost. But the greatest challenge, as you can see, since I started this business, has been keeping on top of it all while juggling 2 small children. I know that a couple of you will be able to relate to this. And I've had limited help from their dad, who works long hours in one of those crazy jobs at Parliament House. some Canberrans will be aware of what that's like. The second greatest challenge is that the industry isn't really ready for organisations like Odisha that want to publish books within weeks of commissioning them when they're ready to go, rather than several months later to fit in with the media and retail ordering cycles. This ties in with the reason I shifted my focus to print copies. Literary editors are not ebook ready in the main. They require proof copies of books, or at the very least a PDF. If you're going to go to the trouble of creating a print-ready PDF, you may as well do a short print and print run. Then there's the battle to get your book noticed among the hordes that are published each day. It's tough, but I've been heartened by the success we've had with direct sales from the Odisha website. If people want to buy a book, they'll find it, as we discovered with Kevin, which was sold solely from this store for the first few weeks. I might finish now with a quick word about the book I should be working on right now instead of standing here talking to you. Some months ago, the man who must surely be the father of the year ordered 2 copies of Scott's Al Jazeera book from our website. I did something I rarely do and picked up a pen and some writing paper and wrote a personal letter to include with his books. That man was Eurus Grester, and he and the rest of the Grester family, particularly Kylie Grester, have been regular email correspondents ever since. Yesterday, I received my first email from Peter himself and nearly burst into tears on the street in Monaco. I'm going to do it again. Just unbelievable. I'd been working with the Gresters for some months on a book of messages sent to Peter while he was in prison. It was to be called Free Peter Grester, and all profits were to go to the campaign to bring Peter back. Clearly we can't call it that now. So, now that he's back in Australia, Peter will be contributing the introduction to the project himself, and will be able to add a final chapter of the emails he and the family have received, celebrating his newfound freedom. Profits will help the family cover, further announcements since I finished this slide. So I've now spoken to Andrew Grester, and the family have covered their costs thanks to donations to their appeal. And so we've decided that instead we will be donating the money to an organisation that helped them a great deal over the past year, the Foreign Prison Support Service. It's an Australian-based organisation. Yes. And I can also announce here today, as you can see, that the new title, which Peter suggested himself, will be Prison Post, Letters of Support for Peter Grester. It will be published next month, and you can pre-order your copy from the Odisha website now. I'm personally just so glad that this somewhat grim project has become a much happier one, though its messages about press freedom remain as important as ever, particularly as Peter's 2 colleagues are still caught up in the retrial of their case. We wish them well. On a less serious note, someone commented to me last week that publishing a book of emails so soon after a book of tweets could lead to Odisha becoming the go-to publisher of repurposed digital material. Well, why not, I say? So, if you're a food blogger who's made hipsterfoodies.com's top 10 paleo Instagram accounts listing, or you're writing a real-life romantic comedy based on your Snapchat and Tinder experiences, drop me a line.